And I would love to know roughly how old you will begin entering competitions.
The first competition I did, I think I was 11 or 12. It was a small local competition. And then at 13, 14, I was doing a few competitions every year, not many, maybe 3 or 4 local ones. I mean, regional ones. They were called national competition because they were open to every person from the whole country to go. And up until that point, mostly I won all the competitions I entered but this is not too surprising because when you have a good attitude and good nature for music and you are very young and you are advanced because you studied already for many years, you can obtain easily good results in competition. Later, when I was 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, I would say, those were my years in which I did fewer competitions and I didn't have much success. Because, as I said, I was struggling with this new way of playing that my conservatory teacher wanted me to implement, and which I found very unmusical. And also, I was also struggling to find my own way. And it was a moment of growth and also insecurity. And this continued until I finished my degree. But the funny thing is that how it takes very little for things to change. So when I met Anna Maria Pennella, I studied with her for 3 months only, and then I continued. But after 3 months, I entered the biggest national competition in Italy and I won it. So then I started doing international competitions, but I didn't do many. I did 4 or 5. I would say the first couple were good experience. I won a 3rd prize in a competition in Monza called Lina Salagallo, which is still going, and it's very well known in Europe, at least. And so this was a very prestigious result. And I was coming from, I had to basically, I had to stop for a year because I was doing military service. So during my military service, I couldn't travel and I couldn't do competitions. But so after I won the national competitions and before starting to do the international ones, I had to stop for about a year. But then in 97, late 1997, I resumed. 98, I resumed. And I did Monza. So I won the 3rd prize in Monza. And then I went to the Marguerite Long competition in Paris. And I won a 3rd prize there, which this is one of the biggest competitions in the world. That gave me a lot of confidence. And then the year after, 6 months later, I won Cleveland. And 2 years later, I was a silver medalist at the Clybourn. But the Clybourn, I didn't really want to do any more competitions after Cleveland because I was already performing a lot, and I thought it's not necessary to do competitions because I always viewed competitions as a means to an end. And the end was to be able to have a career, to be able to make my living, earn my living in music, not for the sake of competitions themselves. So when I won Cleveland, I thought, okay, now I'm done. I can just focus on playing. But the executive director of the Cleveland competition, and also my own teacher, Anna Maria Pennella, and also other people, they suggested that I really consider doing the Clybourn. Now, the day I was given the Cleveland Prize at the winner's concert, I performed that day and I received my prize. In the audience, there was the executive director of the Van Cliburn competition. He came to observe the competition in Cleveland. And so his name is Arthur Roginski. He is no longer the executive director of the Cliburn, but he was at that time. And so after the winner's concert, when many people were coming to congratulate me, etc., he came to me and he said, you should really, really consider doing the Cliburn competition because it gives you a very big window of exposure. I didn't really want to do it, but I started thinking about it. And the Van Cliburn does give you a very big window of exposure, even in 2001 when I did it, which wasn't, again, it wasn't like now. They have Medici TV, or before Medici TV, they still, in any case, had YouTube or live broadcast. But they did broadcast in Cleveland and at the Clyburn and at the Marguerite Long. They did broadcast every part of the competition over the radio. So all of the performances were recorded. It's just that when you don't have video recording and you don't have good marketing, you can't have millions of people listening like it happens nowadays with the Chopin competition or the Van Cliburn competition. So in any case, I decided to do the Van Cliburn. And I'm sort of glad I did, because it's true that it gives you a lot of exposure, and it can open more doors, and it can make you develop more contacts in the music industry or world, which lead to more concerts. But at the same time, I never stopped teaching, because there was a time when I was teaching my own students in Italy. Then when I started traveling, because I had my first successes in international competition, little by little I had to stop giving private lessons. And I was starting doing master classes organized by concert presenters. And then when I came to Cleveland and won the competition, they organized so many concerts with master classes. And then something funny happened, because my wife and I were still living in Italy when I won the Cleveland competition. I got married, by the way, but I got married 2 weeks before the Cleveland competition. And then we traveled to Cleveland together. And after I won the competition, I went back to Italy, and we stayed in Italy for almost 2 more years. And I was traveling back and forth to play concerts. It was very tiring. So in Italy, we opened an academy in the town where we were living, which was not my hometown. It is a place in the center of Italy, in a mountain region of Abruzzo, not too far from Rome. But in any case, we opened our academy and named the academy after Anna Maria Pennella. And so she would regularly come and teach there, and I would teach there as well. And we had that for about a year. And then an opportunity came to move to the States. But also the decision was, because jet lag, traveling too often back and forth, it was really not sustainable in the long run. So we went to Cleveland in February of 2001 and played a concert, which was a mixed concert. I was playing solo, but then I also played 4 hands with my wife. And post-concert, there was a reception. And I mentioned that we were considering moving. As soon as we mentioned that same night, we received a job offer from a local college in Cleveland. But it wasn't exactly a teaching position. It was more like artist in residence, teaching master classes to the entire Northeast Ohio. So students from CIM, students from Oberlin, students from many places. Baldwin Wallace is another school. And then mostly playing concerts for the community for a whole year. So we decided to do it. We accepted, and we moved to Cleveland. That same month, a professor of the Oberlin Conservatory was taking a sabbatical. So he was taking a complete year off. And they were looking for a replacement, for a substitute. He contacted me and told me, why don't you apply for the job? Oberlin is a prestigious school. So I applied for the job, and I learned later that even though it was only a 1-year job, there were many, many people applying from all over the world. I didn't know that. So I went there and I auditioned for it, like interviewed, I should say, for it. And they offered me the job. So now I am in February of 2001, I've just been offered a job for 1 year, starting in September, to be an artist in residence at a local college. Then at the same time, starting in September, I will always also have a full-time teaching job in Oberlin for 1 year, teaching 18 students. And then in February, still, same month, I remember I had a concert in Puerto Rico. I come back from Puerto Rico and I go straight to Chicago to audition for the Clyburn. Because at the time, you had to pass an audition with with a tape, but then you were invited to one of many locations to do live audition for pre-selection. And so I don't know, something like 500 people applied, and then 150 were chosen. And some auditioned in Chicago, some in New York, some in Fort Worth, some in Moscow, some in Tokyo, etc. I went to Chicago because it's the closest to Cleveland, and Northwestern University in Evanston. That's where I auditioned. And I passed the audition for the Clyburn. I get invited to the Clyburn, and the Clyburn takes place in May, June. And then I win the silver medal. And this brings about a lot of concerts, like 90 or 100 concerts. It was really a lot. So I still had some concerts from the Cleveland competition. Now I also have many concerts from the Clyburn competition, plus the job as artist in residence, plus the full-time teaching job at Oberlin, all the same year. That was not planned. It just happened that way, and it was totally crazy. I basically shut myself in my studio at Oberlin, and I would practice all night long because during the day I was teaching all day, and then I would travel and come back. It was a good thing I was young. um, so that's everything that happened all at once. But then when I finished the 1-year job at Oberlin, the provost, actually no, he was the dean at the time. The dean of Oberlin calls me in to ask me, can we explore a possibility to have you stay here? Because, of course, Professor Peter Takach was the professor I substituted for. He was coming back. He continued to teach at Oberlin for the rest of his career. He just recently retired. But he was coming back, and the dean was trying to find a way to keep me to teach at Oberlin. But because of all that had happened in that 1 year, I said, I better don't teach for 1 year at any school. I just play, because I still had another full season of many, many engagements. And I was traveling a lot and building a lot of repertoire too, because when you have so many concerts, that's an opportunity. I learned most of my concerto repertoire. I learned when I started touring. I had a few concerti, but not many. And then when I started winning competitions and orchestras were contracting me, often they would tell me, can you play this concerto? Can you play that concerto? And I didn't have it, but I learned it. So I was learning a lot of new music. And so 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years, I didn't teach anywhere. And then the president of CIM at the time called me and asked me for a meeting. And I go into this meeting, and he said that he had spoken to the faculty, and they were all supporting the idea of me joining CIM. And so that's how I joined CIM. That was in 2003.
Wow, that's incredible. And it's all happening in 1 year.
The 2001, the moving and all these jobs, etc. Yeah, they all happened in a very concentrated way. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And also, I should add that I was in 1999 when I went to Cleveland. I didn't speak a word of English. I never studied English at school. I studied French, and I learned French by traveling there. I learned Spanish very easily because it's not too dissimilar from my own language. But certainly I didn't speak English. And so the first time I was in Cleveland, I couldn't speak to anybody. But fortunately, I learned it very quickly. And after a few months, I could really already do master classes in English. And it continued to get better because I started reading books. I basically self-taught. And then I started watching movies in English. And, every time I went to America, I would watch TV to try to see what I could understand. And this also helped me. Especially, I watched movies that I already knew from Italy when they were dubbed in Italian. But I already knew the story, and sometimes I already knew the lines. So when I watched them in America, I could follow and I could really understand what they were saying. That helped a lot too. So by the time 2001 came, I was already fluent and I could do all of those things. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And there's one thing that I'm curious about. As a parent yourself, did you encourage your children to study music? Or just like you, did they find their own desire to learn it?
I have only one child. She is a cellist now. And she will turn 21 in June. So, wow. Yes, she was born 2005. Eleanor is her name. Eleanor grew up in a completely different environment, because both her parents were professional musicians. And so she was exposed to classical music from the womb. Her mother, my wife, was playing Beethoven Choral Fantasy 1 week before giving birth. And when she was pregnant 7 months, she was playing Gershwin Rhapsody in Blue with another orchestra. And so I do remember that Eleanor didn't like the low brass. When the low brass was playing very loudly, she would kick.
Wow.
You know? Yes. Or maybe she liked it. Maybe she got excited. I don't know. But the point is, she was exposed to music since birth or before. And when she was very little, every time I took her or my wife took her in the car, we would listen to classical music. At home, we would listen to classical music. We would practice. When she was 2 years old, her favorite piece was the Goldberg Variations. When she turned 3, she always asked me to put the Prokofiev sonatas played by Yefim Bronfman in the car. So just to give you an idea, completely different. She had an awareness of classical music I couldn't possibly have. Also, she grew up in a city, Cleveland, where there is one of the best orchestras in the world. And there are all the major artists visit, and you can go and listen to them, and which, as I said, I could never do when I was growing up. So when she was, but at the same time, we were aware of the dangers of asking a child to start playing or to push her. We didn't want to do that. So we hoped that she would express the desire to learn. And when she was 5 years old, I remember it was funny the way she put it. She was telling us, well, everybody plays piano in this family. Why don't I? I should be playing the piano. I want to. And so we said, okay, we were waiting for you to ask. But we didn't teach her ourselves. We asked a friend and colleague to teach her. So for the first 2 years, she played piano. She learned piano. She made her progress. But I have to say, she never showed the enthusiasm for piano that one would hope for. So when she was 7 years old, she asked if she could take cello instead. She was a little bit afraid that we as parents would be disappointed or mad. But instead, we were very happy because it's good. There's already 2 pianists in the family. It's good for a child to get away from the shadow of the parents. All we were hoping for is she would have a musical interest and become a musician would be even better. But in her own way, that's the best. So she has been learning the cello since 7. She studies at my school, at CIM. She has been studying there since she was a child, a very young child, since the beginning. And now she is a junior in college. But she actually already auditioned for masters. So she will be a master's student starting from next year because she was advanced, so she could skip a year, basically.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Because, many of my musicians' friends eventually end up playing the same instrument of their parents, and it's almost unconsciously. And so do you ever play music together at home?
Yeah, we have played even in public together. We are now planning, for example, a recital this summer with the Debussy and Prokofiev sonatas and a sonata composed by an Italian composer. Oh, you probably remember this name, Roberto Piana. He's the same guy who wrote the Ravel piece, yes. Mm-hmm. So, wonderful composer. He wrote a cello sonata. We already played it with my daughter, but we're playing it again inside this program. And we're playing this program in Italy, and we're playing it in Cleveland in the summer and then in September. So, for example, but often I accompanied her in cello concertos, such as the Schumann or the Saint-Saëns, and we played together several things. Yeah, and she sometimes plays with my wife. She sometimes plays with me, so it depends. Yeah.
Wow, that's wonderful.
But generally speaking, I like a piano sound that is singing and legato and close to the human voice, or spoken, soft spoken also, whispered, or even more intense, but never harsh and never wooden and never unsophisticated, never rude.